conference play is over for Super Rugby. Joining me in studio is Sport 24 editor Garen and chief writer Rob. They're going to let us know what we can expect from the only South African team to make the playoffs, the Sharks. Hello, guys.
Hi, Jen.
Hello, Jen.
Well, like I said, conference play is over, so Super Rugby is no more. We're going into playoffs. Now, we only have one South African team heading to playoffs, the Sharks.
Right.
Garen, why don't you tell me what we can expect? What's going to happen now?
Okay, so everyone's now played 16 matches, and we know the 6 teams that have made the playoffs. You know, the way it works basically is that the 3 conference winners from the South African, Australian, and New Zealand conference, they get automatic berths in the playoffs. But the Waratahs from Australia and the Crusaders from New Zealand, they've taken the all-important top 2 slots, so they actually get a bye in the next round. The Sharks were the worst, if you like, of the conference winners, so they finished 3rd in the log. Mm-hmm. They now play the 6th team, which were the Highlanders. The Highlanders sort of stumbled their way, if you like, into the playoffs. They lost their last 2 games really heavily to, you know, almost miss out, but they've got there, and now they will play the Sharks in Durban this weekend. Interestingly, the Highlanders actually beat the Sharks during the conference play in Durban, so I don't expect that to happen again. I really think the Sharks will be too good for them this time, but the Sharks have that extra game that they don't really want to play. You never know how many injuries they might pick up, how many players might be banned or cited after the game, so it's this sort of added distraction having to play this other game while you know that the top 2 teams, the other conference winners, have the weekend off, resting players, you know, players getting over injuries, and then they will actually be at home against the Sharks if they win their match. So not ideal, and certainly the first time only one South African team has made the playoffs, so that's not great. You've got 2 Australian teams and 3 New Zealand teams going through, so good signs for the New Zealand teams, if you like, heading into the Rugby Championships, where it'll be all important when the Wallabies and the Springboks and the All Blacks, you know, tackle each other there.
Rob, what do you expect moving into the playoffs?
Well, I mean, obviously, now you would hope that most South Africans will still get squarely behind the Sharks. Not everybody will, we know that. There are some really die-hard fans of other franchises who would rather face death, I think, than have to support the Sharks, but which is a pity, really, because we should all rally behind them now. Most people will. The tragedy, really, I think, Jen, is that they've probably now realistically got perhaps a 25% chance of winning the title. They've got a long, grueling route ahead, and they've had a long, grueling sort of passage anyway. They're a team that have had a lot of they contributed a lot of the Springbok players in the June period. A lot of those players played an awful lot of rugby for the Boks, then went back into having to play an awful lot of rugby again for the Sharks. So the last thing the Sharks really need is this extra match. The only fillip, perhaps, as Garen mentioned, is that it's a home game. So they're back at Kings Park for a game against the Highlanders. They shouldn't fall into the trap of losing to them again. They were caught sort of cold and unawares when they played them in ordinary season and lost, I think it was something like 34-18 and 4 tries to 0. It was a real walloping. And the Sharks will keep that in the back of their minds and be aware that they will want to reverse that at the weekend. And bear in mind that the New Zealand team, of course, will have had the disadvantage of having to fly long haul to South Africa through time zones and all the disruption that causes. So the Sharks, although they're tired, the Highlanders will also go into the game fairly knackered. And on that basis, you've got to think that the Sharks will proceed into the semis, which of course will involve travel again. And the real hurdle for them may well come when they then have to face the Crusaders in Christchurch.